Welcome to another special episode of our Capital Ideas podcast, The Power of Advice. Today, we're exploring what it takes to lead transformation at a massive automaker. And who better to guide us than Mary Barra, who began her career at General Motors as a co-op student in the 1980s and is now GM's CEO. Mary, welcome to The Power of Advice. Glad you're here.
Super glad to be here as well.
So I'm going to turn back the clock to childhood. We're going to go way back.
Okay.
And I know that your mom would often set the table with an empty spot for someone else to join, family or friends, and it was a ritual you had. Why did that happen? How important was that? And we do have a photo, by the way. Mary and her mom a while back, maybe 35, 40 years ago, something like that.
Maybe a little longer than that.
A little longer than that.
Right.
But why was that such an important ritual?
First of all, my parents were older. And so I think a lot of people came to my mother for advice. Everyone knew when my dad got home from work, he was a die maker. And so when he got home from work, she'd have a pot of coffee and some sweets for him to eat. And people wanted to join that table.
Right.
Often that would kind of go into the dinner time. And if she didn't have enough food for how many people were there, she would go into the back cabinet and get a can of tuna. And my brother and I would be like, oh my gosh, she's getting tuna fish out again. She's going to make tuna fish sandwiches.
Right.
And
we're going to have coffee, sweets, and tuna fish sandwiches.
Well, now it's dinner.
Right.
And she doesn't have enough of what she planned for dinner. And at my mother's funeral, during the eulogy, they started by saying, how many people have had a sandwich from Eva, a tuna fish sandwich? And all these people raised their hand. It was about including people, listening to people, and caring about people. They didn't care that they ate tuna.
Yeah, it's just the seat at the table and being engaged.
Being included.
Yeah, being included.
Yes.
It's a great lesson for all of us. You mentioned your family and your dad being a die maker, 40 years at General Motors. Mm-hmm. So what was that like? Is there an early memory you had growing up? Because you've been a part of the GM family forever now.
Right.
Is there an early memory you have that sticks with you?
Well, I think one of the things that I remember is every now and then, my dad would get to bring a car home. He worked for Pontiac Motor Division, so one of the latest model Pontiacs, and the whole neighborhood would come over. All the kids, we would sit in every spot in the car. We'd, play with all of the
roll down the windows,
roll down the window, play with the AM radio.
Exactly.
But it was something that the whole neighborhood looked forward to because it was their chance to get to see this new product. So those are some pretty fond memories.
So you did start at GM at 18.
Yes.
Talk to us about what your first job was like at GM.
I was actually on the assembly line, and I was responsible to collect data on the vehicle of the fender gap and so the hood to the fender and then the fender to the door. And at the end of the day, we would analyze the data. I'd turn it into the quality leader. And that's how we started.
Consistency?
For consistency and to see how the vehicle was building. I mean, we use vision and a lot more sophisticated techniques now, but we still care because that is the crispness of the vehicle when the gaps are uniform and not too big. So it's still important. I don't think we have student interns doing that any longer.
Yeah, it's probably a bit different. And those were early years where you were hands-on, like you said, right on the line. What did that teach you that stayed with you today?
I think it's the dedication of the people who actually build the vehicles because they care so much. I remember 2 years ago, I was visiting a plant, and it was a part that needed precision. And they actually had a spiral notebook, and they were showing me, hey, I was watching this, and I started collecting this data on their own, analyzed it, took it home, analyzed it, and actually what she did led to a product improvement. And it's that kind of dedication. That's not a one-off. That happens probably, if there's a plant where 2,000 people work, that's happening 200 times a day. Their dedication to keep making sure we're building high-quality vehicles safely is just, I'm grateful for it.
So you still go back on the floor?
Yes. Oh, yes.
So when you're there, obviously it's great for them to see the CEO of General Motors on the floor. What do you take away? What are you paying attention to? What are you looking for?
Well, number one is, first of all, safety. I want to make sure that everybody is following our safety practices. And then one of the first steps anytime I'm at a plant is we work on employee engagement and inclusion, and the teams will report what they're doing to make sure we're communicating clearly, or that people are getting the assistance that they need. And then we go out on the floor and we just get to see all the cool things that they're working on, new technology,
Sure.
a brand new vehicle that they're getting ready to launch. So, but it's all about the people.
So you've built your whole career at one company, but you've done a lot of different jobs. I think you did product development, human resources, supply chain. Those are very different, to do lots of different jobs, but all at one company. What has it taught you?
Well, I really feel like I've had, 10 careers at General Motors because in addition to what you mentioned, I also spent time in communications. I was a plant manager. And so I feel like I really understand. We're, unlike a lot of companies the size of General Motors, we really do one thing. We, design, engineer, build, and service vehicles, and then the services associated with that. And it's a very integrated business.
Right.
So being in all those different functions really helps me understand and appreciate what each team is doing and how they need to work together. So I think that the fact that I've worked in so many different functions really helps me understand our business better.
So you have the mind of an engineer, but also as a leader, people feel like you're super connected. Mm-hmm. So I always refer to that as a nice blend of EQ and IQ, which you have and other people say about that. But how does that show up in your leadership style?
I think, first of all, it's very people-focused. I worked for a leader early in my career who said you have to win their hearts and minds to really engage them. And I think when people know you care, they're
Right.
going to work. They're going to work harder because everyone comes to work. They want to feel valued. They want to know that what they're doing is important. They want to know that they have a career path.
And you're connecting to the mission. I mean, I think that in any organization, it's so important. How does my job connect to the broader mission? I think the alignment there is super important.
And we've really been working on that over the last few years because it used to be we'd put a plan in place and we knew the product portfolio we were working on. And with all the changes happening, we're an industry in transformation. We're heavily affected by regulations. Those are changing dramatically, as well as every business is changing because of technology. And so we realized we really had to do a better job of communicating and help people see, okay, here's the most top-level goals of the company, but how does it spread across to 160,000 people around the globe that they understand what they do every day and how it fits. We're being very deliberate about making those connections. And that was a big lesson learned we had from our people who said, wait, I'm not sure I understand.
And that change is so important. I mean, GM has this amazing legacy, global company, well-known, incredibly successful. I love the Tahoe, by the way. I thought I'd mention that.
Thank you.
But you have this great legacy, and you have so much change, and you're reinventing all of the time. That's a balance. So celebrating the past and some things that were great that people hold on to dearly, but also saying we got to change, we got to keep improving.
If you go back to the early days of General Motors, there are so many fascinating things of how the company was founded and the innovation that occurred, developing headlamps, developing the electric starter. So there's this rich history of innovation at General Motors. Clearly we lost our way. And one of the things I learned being there through the restructuring and the bankruptcy was no one has a right to exist. Even a company that's 100 years old, you do not have a right to exist. And I think that causes me to have a healthy I'm paranoid about making sure that we are innovating and that we're working to lead and we're looking over the horizon to see what's happening in our industry to make sure we're going to be in a leadership position. So our history, the great of the beginning and the difficulty in the middle of my career has really caused me to you have to change. Or we're not going to exist.
Well, and part of that, you talk about the future. Let's pivot to EVs. Where do you think that's headed?
I believe we'll get to an all EV future because I think the vehicles, it opens up design language. I think the technology is better. And what we've already learned, even in this early phase of EV adoption, once someone buys an EV, they generally buy another. And
so the data suggests that they stick with it.
That will happen. And the reason it's not growing faster, I think, is because you think about buying a vehicle. For most people, it's either the most important or the second most important/expensive thing that they buy, they're very rational. And right now, we don't have a resilient enough charging infrastructure. And for that person that only owns one vehicle and has to depend on it for everything in their life and all the unexpected
Limits
things,
some things they can
it limits, right. And so as the charging infrastructure gets more robust, as we get the battery costs down, I think it will naturally grow because I do think that the vehicles offer a better experience.
And that 100% EV world, is that 25 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now? Do you have a, and it's a crystal ball. We'll come back 50 years and ask you, but do you have a sense for how long that may be? It's a hard question, but.
I've been wrong a couple times already, but I think that a lot of it will depend on the regulatory environment. But I think there are some things in motion already that I think we'll see higher adoption by 2030, by 2035. I used to think we would be there by 2035 for light-duty vehicles. I think it might take a little longer than that with where we are right now. Right. But if you also look around the globe, it's happening at a faster rate in some other regions of the world.
So talking about the globe, the world loves Formula One.
Yes.
Everybody loves F1. And now you're in it with Cadillac.
Yes.
What went into that decision?
Well, I have to give our president, Mark Royce, huge credit. We have a very extensive motorsports business and leadership position in many of the different categories that we compete in. We've been on this journey to rebuild Cadillac for about the last 8 to 10 years. And Cadillac's there now, from a craftsmanship, from design, beauty, technology. And we really thought that was the stage that Cadillac needed to be on. It's true American luxury. We're the only full works American team. And, we're there to demonstrate what Cadillac is, what it can be. We're humble. We're very excited to be there.
That's exciting. It's funny you mentioned that. Cadillac, I remember my father-in-law had a Cadillac back in the 80s, and it was, you talk about the possession that someone has that's so important to them, it was his prized possession.
Yes, yes.
It's just so important. Let's get into advice.
Sure.
So if you go back to your first day as CEO, what would you tell yourself about leading through change? Because I do believe GM's been transformed. And when I look at what's happened with your company and the product development and how shareholders have done in recent years, for sure, it has been a transformation. And you and obviously your team deserve a ton of credit for that. But what advice would you have given yourself when you took the job a little while back?
I think a couple things. One, make sure you have the right team, and because the success, and we still have so much more to do, is all because of the team working together, having the right people in the right spots. And so when somebody says, "Oh, you've done such a great job," I really have to quickly say, "It's the team." But I think making sure you have the right people and embracing change. I think early on there, it's like kind of, okay, I'm here. Let's just take a moment and run the business the way we have. You don't have that opportunity. And frankly, that was 12 years ago. You don't even have a minute to do that anymore. You have to be looking at what's changing, where you've got to go. You've got to get there fast.
And when you're helping culture and building culture and improving on it, there's some things that you do to make it even better, and there's some things you need to take away so it gets better. What are some of the things from a corporate culture that if you could, wave the wand and take it away to make it better, what would it be?
I think one of the things that frustrates me the most is when people say, "Well, this is the way we've always done it."
Right.
It's like, okay, that in itself we should be looking for how do we innovate and improve. So that would be that mindset. Replace that with how do I make it better every day, whether it's incremental improvement or radical improvement. And there's so many tools right now that help you make that jump quicker than I think most people realize even yet.
I smile when you say that because we all hear that.
Yeah.
And I heard that in a role I had about 15 years ago. So I went out to the countryside to a friend's farm in a suit, got on a horse, had my picture taken, and then brought it back into the office and said, "This is not how I got to the office today." And so that mindset,
especially true for my industry.
Especially true for you. Maybe I got to the office in the Tahoe. You are and were obviously the first woman to lead a major U.S. automaker, global automaker. So that's interesting in that it's symbolic, but how do you carry that with you but not let it define you?
Well, when I was growing up, my mother, who didn't have the opportunity to go to college, but believed in the American dream. And so I was just raised, you can do and be anything you put your mind to be. And that's the way she raised both my brother and I. So when I got the job, and people would say, they'd literally look at me and say, so you're the first woman of an auto company. I'm like, yes. Right. And I was like, is there a question here? But early on, someone came up to me after I was in a session and said, my daughter now thinks she's going to pursue an engineering degree because she's seen what you did. Yeah. And then the light bulb went on for me, because my mother raised me to believe I could be and do anything. But there are a lot of young women, young girls who think, wait, I don't see anyone who does that, so can I do it? And so then it really became something that I need to make sure that I demonstrate that, yes, you can do that. Yes, you can get an engineering degree, and you can enter the corporate world and be successful, and you can be a mom while you're doing that, and you can do both well. And so I've tried to speak more about it, because I realized for many it was something that by seeing me achieve it, they believed they could.
They saw themselves, they could do that.
Yes.
One of the things you talk about is you say, don't take yourself out of the running before you even start. Bring that to life for folks as some of the advice you give.
Well, this is primarily for women, and this is broader than General Motors. But what in business we've found is a lot of women will say, if there's 10 requirements for a job, they'll say, well, I can't go for it because I only have 8. And then a male will look at it and say, I've got 6, I'm going to go for it. And they look at me like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, you go for it if you only have 6. That's okay, because you're going to learn as you go through the interview process. You're going to learn what you need to work on. You're going to get experience, and it's that mindset. So I try to make sure that people don't say, well, I literally had a young woman come to me and said, I someday want to get married and I want to have kids, so I can't do that job. And I said, oh, well, are you close to, and she goes, no. I said, well, there could be a lot of time between now and then. And I try to use myself as example. I was able to work, be married, raise children, and you can't have it all, but you can make the right trade-offs, I think, to be able to be successful in the dimensions that are important to you. And so I really try to convey that, especially to young women, but also for some young men. They need to hear that as well.
It's so important. It's believing in yourself and going for it.
Yes.
Just don't talk yourself out of something. Just go for it.
Well, right. You never achieve something you never even try to do. Yeah. So you've got to go for it.
What legacy, and you're humble and folks don't usually like to talk about legacy, but what legacy do you hope to leave behind when you ultimately retire from General Motors? You've already had an incredible career. You have runway left, which is excellent. But what legacy do you want to leave behind?
I would like to make sure we've done the right foundation, and to be able to make sure General Motors is around for the next 50 years, the next 100 years. It's such an iconic company. There's so many things that General Motors is responsible for. I want to make sure I'm building that foundation for the next person and the next person to take it to the next level.
Well, you've already done a lot of that, so congratulations. I will get to the rapid fire. What car do you drive?
Right now, I'm a Hummer EV SUV.
Wow. Okay. What's a feature in a car that's non-negotiable? You have to have it in the car that you drive.
Heated seats.
Heated seats. I like the heated steering wheel, by the way.
Yeah, that's pretty nice too.
That's pretty nice too. What's your favorite GM model?
That's such a hard question, especially since I ran product. But if I had to, the Hummer, I just love driving the Hummer because I feel like I get this different respect. It's a big vehicle. You can turn on a dime. I'm a big Corvette fan, and I'm really excited about some of our small vehicles as well, like the Bolt or the Chevy Trax. So the full range.
Okay, fair enough. What do you listen to in the car when you're driving?
Whatever my children have put on their Spotify playlist, because I keep going to them.
Got it. Me too. Manual or automatic?
I know how to drive. My second vehicle was a manual, but I prefer automatic.
I love the old stick shift cars.
Then you need a Cadillac CT5.
Okay, I put that on the list.
Yep,
there we
go.
You go. What do you do? Something you do every day to just keep you focused?
One of the things, I try to start the morning and I read a series of different daily news updates, from different perspectives. And I find that just really helps me start the day with a little bit of paranoia, but just that sense of today's a fresh day, a new day. We got to make sure that we're continuing to innovate, move the ball down the field type of thing. And so I think just looking and being on top of everything that's changing on such a fast pace.
It is.
That gets me very focused early in.
We finish the podcast I do with our investment professionals the same way for our guests of The Power of Advice, where we talk about gratitude, something that you're grateful for. We have a Power of Advice gratitude mug that we will not make you carry. We will send it to you. I will hand it to you. But
right.
what is something that you individually are grateful for?
I'm grateful for my family. And then as I look at it from a GM perspective, I'm grateful for the people that come to work every day. You know, our headquarters and our roots are in Detroit. Detroit is a city of grit. I think that spirit of grit, of getting things done, has spread across the globe. But I'm grateful for the people who come to work every day who want to make General Motors better.
Well, your 160,000 associates and colleagues are lucky to have you in the seat. I'm sure they're grateful that you've led this company for the last dozen years. Before we go, I am going to ask you to sign our Power of Advice guest book and ask you to share the best piece of advice you have for our viewers and listeners.
Okay. I wrote, do the right thing even when it's hard.
Excellent advice. Thank you for all of your comments, your conversation about the history of General Motors and your time there, and also really the advice that you gave so many people. I think a lot of people will listen and watch this and take so much from it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and we can talk Tahoe and we can talk Cadillac CT5.
Good. Will do. Have a good day, everybody.